Hey everyone, Harvinder with Realty Experts here. Today we're looking into the heart of the real estate business, the multiple listing service, better known as the MLS. This system, with its fascinating history and evolving dynamics, plays a pivotal role in how properties are bought and sold across the country. We'll be uncovering its origins, its impact on the industry, and how it's shaping the future of real estate. Just an FYI, this podcast is recorded by two AI, and I think they're doing a fantastic job. Instead of reinventing the wheel, I'm sharing it with very little customization. Hope you enjoy it. Your insights and questions are incredibly valuable, so feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let's explore the fascinating world of the MLS together.
Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. This time we're taking a closer look at something most of us probably take for granted. The MLS, or Multiple Listing Service. You know that thing you browse endlessly when you're daydreaming about new houses or trying to figure out what your neighbor got for theirs?
It's become so ubiquitous, but believe it or not, it wasn't always apps and algorithms.
Right. So to really understand how we got to where we are today, we've got to go back to the very beginning.
And we're talking way, way back. Forget Silicon Valley. We're heading to sunny San Diego in 1885.
1885. Now that's what I call a deep dive. What was the real estate scene even like back then?
Well, you gotta imagine a world without the internet, without even telephones in most places. So how did real estate agents share information about properties? They used runners.
Runners, like people literally running.
You got it. They would sprint across the city twice a day, delivering handwritten property listings. Talk about a workout. This was the very first MLS built on trust, hustle, and, I imagine, some really comfortable shoes.
It's incredible. No fancy websites, no apps, just a network of agents sharing information on foot. What was the impetus behind creating this system?
You gotta remember, real estate back then was like the Wild West. No standardized licensing, no central database. So this early MLS, rudimentary as it was, it provided a much-needed semblance of order. It let those early brokers collaborate and, crucially, vouch for each other.
It's fascinating to think about how important trust was in those early days. It's not like you could just Google someone's credentials or look them up on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Their reputation was everything. A system like this, even one that relied on legwork, helped establish a sense of professionalism in an industry that frankly had very little regulation.
It was about establishing a code of conduct, setting a standard.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it worked. Now, this was all happening under the watchful eye of the National Association of Real Estate Boards, or NAREB, which was the precursor to today's National Association of Realtors.
Oh, wow. The NER. They're kind of a big deal in the real estate world. So they were involved right from the start.
Well, in those early years, their role was still evolving, but they really threw their weight behind the MLS during that massive post-World War II housing boom. Think about it. The country's bursting with new families, everyone needs a place to live, and demand for homes is through the roof.
It sounds like a recipe for utter chaos without a system in place.
You said it. The MLS, by then more established, became the go-to source for reliable information. It brought a level of transparency and, honestly, a sense of sanity to a market that was on fire.
So the MLS helped bring order to the Wild West of post-war real estate, ensuring people could buy and sell homes without it devolving into utter mayhem. But, in the world of podcasts and deep dives, there's always a but lurking around the corner, isn't there?
Well, you hit the nail on the head there. The MLS, while incredibly helpful in many ways, also had its share of complexities, especially during those pivotal decades.
Ooh, complexities, you say. Now you've got me hooked. Tell me more. Okay, so before we dove into this whole thing, you mentioned that the MLS, despite all the good it did, had some complexities, especially during that post-war boom. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's like the MLS was rapidly becoming this essential tool for the real estate industry, but we can't forget the social backdrop of that era. Unfortunately, the system itself wasn't immune to the inequalities that were sadly very present at the time.
You're talking about the exclusion of minority brokers, right?
Exactly. Black, Jewish, and female brokers, particularly, faced systemic barriers. They were often denied access to real estate boards, and because the MLS was tied to membership in these boards, they were also shut out from this increasingly vital tool. And this went on for decades, well into the 1960s.
It's a tough reality check. Even with something that's designed to make things fairer, to bring more transparency, those existing inequalities can find ways to persist.
Absolutely. It underscores why it's so crucial to be intentional about diversity and inclusion, even in something like real estate listings, which you might think is pretty straightforward. But it all comes down to access, right? Ensuring that everyone has an equal opportunity to participate, whether they're working within the industry or looking to buy a home.
It's about making sure the system works for everyone. So how did we get from those early days of runners literally sprinting with handwritten listings to the MLS we know today, the one we can't imagine living without when we're house hunting?
Well, get ready for this. We're entering the era of the iconic MLS book.
Oh, I've heard about these.
We're talking massive volumes, updated monthly, filled with those grainy black and white photos and as many property details as they could cram in. Agents would eagerly await the arrival of the newest edition.
It must have been like waiting for the new phone book to arrive, which, if you've ever seen the movie The Jerk, you know was a big deal back then. I bet those agents treated those MLS books like they were sacred texts.
Oh, absolutely. Those books were their lifeline, their Bible, their window into what was available. They were constantly flipping through those pages, dog-earing them, you name it. But just like with everything else, technology waits for no one. The late 70s and early 80s saw the introduction of, get this, computers into real estate offices. Those clunky terminals, they were starting to replace those massive books.
No more paper cuts or ink stains, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But seriously, that must have been a huge shift for a lot of agents. You know, going from those familiar tactile books to staring at a screen all day.
You're telling me, imagine having to learn this whole new way of doing things, this whole new language. It was definitely a learning curve, but the promise, faster access to listings, and more importantly, more up-to-date information, that was a game changer.
Because those books were only updated once a month, right?
Exactly. And in a hot market, a lot can happen in a month. Now, those early computer systems, let's just say they weren't exactly user-friendly.
No, I can imagine. I'm picturing those clunky keyboards, maybe green text on a black screen.
Oh, you've got it. Definitely no drag and drop or one-click searches back then.
Yeah, those were the dial-up modem days. It's come a long way since then. But I guess, in a way, that was the first sign of the digital wave that was about to completely upend the real estate world, right?
Oh, absolutely. The floodgates were about to open.
Okay, so we've journeyed from runners sprinting across San Diego to clunky computers slowly taking over real estate offices. But I'm sensing the story of the MLS doesn't end there.
You're right on the money. This is where things get really interesting. We're talking about a seismic shift, a full-blown digital revolution hitting the real estate industry. And it all really took off in the mid-90s with the launch of a little thing called Realtor.com. For the first time ever, MLS data wasn't confined to those massive books or even those computer terminals. It was online, accessible to anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Talk about a game changer. And I bet that didn't sit well with everyone in the industry.
Oh, absolutely not. Some agents, well, they saw it as a threat, right? Their whole thing was having that insider information, that exclusive access to the MLS. Suddenly, anyone with a dial-up connection could browse listings from their couch. It challenged the very core of their business model.
So how did they adapt? Did everyone just panic?
Well, there's definitely some of that, some ruffled feathers for sure. But the smart agents, they realized that this new transparency, this wealth of readily available information, it wasn't a death knell, it was an opportunity.
An opportunity to redefine their role, right? Instead of being the gatekeepers of information, they became more like guides.
Exactly. They could help clients navigate this new online world, interpret the data, make sense of it all. They could leverage their expertise in a whole new way.
And that, I imagine, is how we get to the MLS as we know it today. It's not just those books or even those clunky computers anymore. It's the backbone of these massive online platforms like Zillow and Redfin. The reason we could spend hours browsing houses in our pajamas. No judgment here.
It's true. The MLS has been instrumental in making the U.S. real estate market remarkably transparent, especially when you compare it to other parts of the world.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that finding a home in, say, Europe can be a completely different experience.
Oh, it can be a real eye-opener. In many countries, it's still very much an analog process. Think driving around, peering into real estate office windows, hoping for the best. You might stumble upon a hidden gem, or you might waste hours getting nowhere.
It sounds incredibly inefficient, all that time wasted.
It can be. And even if you do look online, it's often a confusing hodgepodge of listings. You might find the same property listed multiple times by different agents with wildly different prices. It's not exactly a recipe for a stress-free house hunt.
Wow, it really highlights how good we have it here with the MLS. So this system, this thing that started with runners on the streets of San Diego, it's now something other countries are looking to replicate.
It's true. There's a growing movement to export the MLS model to bring that same level of transparency and efficiency to other real estate markets. It's amazing to think how far it's come.
It really is remarkable. From handwritten notes to a global phenomenon, we've seen how the MLS brought order to the chaos of the post-war housing boom, how it grappled with issues of inequality, and how it ultimately adapted and thrived in the digital age. And just like those early real estate pioneers, we're always striving for a better way, a more efficient and equitable system. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the ever-evolving world of the MLS, we're left with this question. What's next? What innovations will shape the future of real estate? That's something for all of us to ponder. What do you think the future holds for the MLS, for the way we buy and sell homes? Thanks for joining us, and until next time.